Okay, I guess we're going to get started. Sorry, we're a little bit late. Welcome everyone to this afternoon's demonstration of an artist, Jerry Boyd, who's going to be showing us how to do a portrait in pastel. So this is for the Society of West Coast Artists. We are a membership society, and we're always looking for new members. So if any of you out there are not members, we encourage you to join and be a part of this society and be able to exhibit your paintings in our beautiful gallery. My name is Jim Stinger. I am the president of the San Francisco chapter of the Society of West Coast Artists. And I'd like to introduce Jerry, who is our artist for today. Gerald Boyd is a representational artist who works in a variety of media, including oil, watercolor, and pastel. After having painted an estimated 1,200 billboards during a 42-year career, Jerry was among the last of several generations of artists who made their living painting giant outdoor advertisements until technology rendered that craft virtually extinct. As Jerry neared age 40, he began entering art shows, local, then regional, local, then regional, and eventually national and international level, and has produced award winners consistently. Jerry has given in excess of 100 painting demonstrations, primarily portraits, to art clubs in Northern and Central California. Jerry is a signature member of the Society of West Coast Artists, yay, the Pastel Society of the West Coast, and the Pastel Society of America. He has earned the Distinguished Pastelist designation from the Pastel Society of the West Coast. And you can visit his website at gboyd.faso.com. So please do that, and please enjoy the demonstration. Jerry, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jim. I want to make sure I'm on camera here.
You are, yes.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for inviting me. I've been a member of SWA since the late 70s or early 80s. The first few years I didn't really get busy with it, but I was a member, and then in 1986 I decided to get busy on a signature designation, and something I had never had at other art clubs. So I entered my first annual show. I hadn't even seen one before I entered it until 86 when I ran across one. And so I entered that. I was accepted. So I went from there, entering every show that they had throughout that year. So I gained my signature in 1988, and I've been a continuous member ever since. It's a great group, and so again, I appreciate you attending. We have a vast audience out here. Don't panic, but anyway, we have a few people here because of circumstances we all understand. So I'm going to get started with a little bit of talking about papers and pastel. Pastel is often called chalk. And chalk is a cheap stick of pigment that's mostly made out of limestone and dyes, so it's not permanent. It's not quality, but every form of paint for artists, whether it's oil paint or watercolor or acrylic or pastel, begins with a powdered pigment. This is burnt sienna, and that's in the powdered form. And depending on depending on what you mix with it, what binder you mix with it will make, whatever paint that you want. If it's oil paint, you're going to mix it with linseed oil or poppy seed oil or something like that. If it's acrylic polymers that dry fast and hard, if it's watercolor, you mix it with gum tranganant or whatever it's called, and other things to make it water soluble. But with pastel, they add just enough binder to this powder pigment to make a paste. The word pastel and paste is associated in its origins, and the French, I think, is pastiche or something like that. So that paste is then extruded through a tube to make round pastels. That's cut off and dried, or it's maybe made in little blocks, squares, and so forth. So, and when it's dried, it's just as pure pigment, if not more so, than oil paint or any other, and as long lasting, all that. It needs to be, that's the upside of it. The downside, if you will, it needs to be covered with a glass to protect the surface because it is available to rub. But the advantage is also over like oil paint, it doesn't crack. It never cracks because it doesn't have enough binder in it or oils and that sort of thing. It could crack. I started actually painting in pastel back in high school, doing little portraits of my friends and classmates, and with a very limited amount of pastel sticks, very limited selection. And the papers I had were a little bit iffy and not very well workable. Later on, I graduated to a Canson paper. It's called Canson by Tempes. It's a French origin paper. And it has a bit of a tooth. It has a sort of a textured side and it has a smoother side. And I usually work on the smoother side. And I worked on that for years. There's another example of it. Until about 1990. Excuse me for turning away, about 1992, I think it was, or maybe a little earlier. I was on a little vacation trip around the wine country, Sonoma, I think, and ran into a art supply store. And they had a German-made paper that was much like sandpaper. I don't have a sample of it here, but it had the texture to it like sandpaper, like fine sandpaper. And it was in several grades. And the store owner said, "You ought to try this." So I tried it. I took it home. I did a painting on it. It was wonderful, like night and day working on with pastel. It's because it would hold the pastel better than just a smoother paint. So that was called Erste paper. It was made in Germany. And later on, there was rumors that it might not be 100% archival. But about that time, a woman up in Washington, the name of Kitty Wallace, who was a pastel artist, made or had made for her a paper that was archival. It's called Wallace paper, and I mean all of the pastel artists, almost all of them, fell in love with the Wallace paper, including me. And it came in a sort of a linen warm gray color. And I used that for years. And the quality of my work went up. And then, unfortunately, they went out of business. It was no longer available. And there were certain things that they couldn't get anymore that made the surface. So, but there are other this was a piece of white Wallace that I just toned with some paint. And, but they made a white and they made that more gray. So I was intended to hand these out to all the people. And I will, you can pass it around. This is one that's really rough. I don't even remember whether it was Richardson or what. There's this again was Wallace here. This is what I usually work on now and what I'm going to be working on today. It's called Pastel Premier. It was about the closest thing I could find to Wallace. So I started using that. They have the ones who made Canson also now make a textured paper called My TNT's Touch. And it comes in various colors and sizes, and it's not bad. I've worked on it a few times. It doesn't have quite the tooth that I like, so I don't use it too much. But there's others. I marked on these. I think this is Color Fix, and they make this in various colors, and it's a pretty good one to use. There is UArt, which is popular with a lot of pastel artists, and it comes in a buff color, and you have to tone it yourself if you want that. So those are all the selections. And but I kind of settled on Pastel Premier, and that's what I'm going to be. And you can find these online. Dakota Art Supplies has those. So I'll pass these around as well. I want to introduce you to a man I call Mr. Blockhead. This is a model head of a male head that's done very crudely, as if you're carving it out of a piece of wood or stone in its preliminary stages, but it's to show the shapes and the planes of the head. We're talking about a typical head. The person who made this was an artist with the name of John Asaro, and he was a teacher at Art Center Art School for years, and I stumbled on his website, and he offered these, a couple or three different kinds of these heads. So I bought them because I was going to teach a workshop in Folsom, California in 2016. And I use these to help teach the class. And one of the things, I bought a set of calipers years ago, and I've never used them much, but I thought they were interesting, and so I bought them. But they are interesting to teach with because the typical head is divided into three parts. The face I'm talking about is divided into three parts. And so the part that goes from about the eyebrows, or if you want the place in the forehead where it starts to turn back, the plane there that begins to turn back. If you measure from that to the eyebrows, it's the same as from the eyebrows. Let me demonstrate here. We'll say the eyebrows are right here, and that's about where the head begins to turn back seriously. And then from the eyebrows to the tip of the nose is equal distance. From the tip of the nose to the bottom of the chin is equal distance. So three, if you're beginning to lay out a portrait, you want to keep that in mind. Those are generalities because everybody is a little bit different. And that's what makes us unique. and look different, but that's a generality to keep in mind. And also, if you notice, the same, I haven't moved this, the same width comes about where the pupils of the eyes are apart. So that's another, road marker, if you will, to constructing a head. Along with that one, I bought a female head, and just to make her a little bit lifelike, or just the gray. I painted some eyebrows on her. I put eyelashes on her. I put lipstick and a little bit of eyeshadow. I'm not a makeup artist, and I haven't observed my wife applying her makeup enough, I think, but I did the best I could. She turned out with an expression, kind of like my wife has when I tell her a story about what I did last night. But anyway, this works the same way with her as well. You got that from the eyebrows to where it's almost to the top of her head and turning back. You got from the eyebrows to the nose, you see, and from the nose to the chin. Yeah. And conversely, you can see where that placement is. Now there are other measurement rules for distance between the lips and the chin and so forth, that typical, but I'm not going to get into that, it's a little too long. So we need to get started. We need to get started, is what I should say to the camera. And to everybody out there, thank you for watching. Okay, we have a wonderful model today, professional model, the name of Barbara, and I'm excited to try to do Barbara's portrait in the time that we will have. Naturally, this is more of a portrait sketch than a finished portrait. You don't have time in an hour and a half or whatever it's going to be. But Barbara brought a hat along with her. At first I was hesitant about trying a hat, but then I'm up for the punishment of including a hat, so I'm going to try that. Because it makes a beautiful statement, I think. The colors, the purple of the hat, the wine color of the sweater of the shirt. So this is going to be fun. She got red hair too. This is going to be a chance to use my, emergency or something like that. So. And this is just a piece of paper to cover the surface that I have. I didn't want it damaged. But beginning, this is a little bigger than, this is a little bit bigger than 16 or 20 by 16. But I marked the top of the head and the bottom of the head. Generally, the bottom of the head is good, the chin is a good place to put it about mid-center of the paper on a 20 by 16 canvas or paper. So this can be generally any size. It's a good thing on a 20 by 16, which is a kind of a typical size for a head and shoulders portrait like a gun. It's kind of typical, so it's best to keep it a little bit under life size. It generally looks better on paper. But you can even take your thumb and finger, and I just guessed there, but look at how close I am. And that's a span that's pretty good for this size of paper. That was just practice, of course, of doing it in reality. It's different, but I then like to draw a center line where her nose would be. And if I was drawing straight down, not going out and so forth. And then I judge this side, and I judge this side. So these are the two marks that are really important to get the width of the portrait, the right proportion and right dimension. The height is variable, but the width compared to the height. And everything that we do in a portrait is comparing shapes from the model to another shape on the head. So there would be, if looking at it, if her nose was here, this space between here and here creates a shape up to her eye. And so this shape right here needs to be exactly right. If you get it too wide, it's going to throw it off. If you get it too narrow, it's going to throw it off. And then, of course, the eye socket and where the eye is placed and the shape of the eyelid. All those shapes are very important. If you get them in the right place, you get them at the right angle because you have to judge angles as well. Looking at her and her position now, the angle of her eyes are kind of along this line rather than straight across. So that's all I want to do. There's the chin from the portion of chin here that we have to judge is very important. All those shapes put together will make a likeness. If you get them off, though, and I've done it, if you get it off, but it's not good. So we'll begin. I'll take this away. Okay, I'm working on a piece of 20 by 16 pastel Premier, and it's white paper. It just happens to be, what I had. So I wanted to tone that to get rid of the white, and I really should have done a little bit darker, but I didn't want to get too carried away. But what I did to tone that, what you can do with most other pastel papers, like that are the sandpaper variety, is you can put strokes of pastel over the paper randomly if you want, or you can have a plan. But I just put it randomly, strokes of various colors, and then I take a brush, a soft brush, not real soft, but bristle like you paint acrylic with. And I have a nice wide one, and I dip it in denatured alcohol, and I paint over that. I don't want to use too much, but you don't want it heavy and running down or anything. But I just paint over that, and it turns that pastel into a solid, and it goes into the paper, and when you work over it, it doesn't pick up. The pastel color doesn't pick up. But you can tone it. You can tone it really dark if you want to, or light, or whatever you want. But that makes a good surface. And of course, they make it in various colors as well. And when they do that, I don't do that, but I just thought I'd show you this. I was going to actually do the technique, but there's drying time that's involved. It's not very long because the the solvent, the alcohol evaporates quickly and it dries. Okay, so here we are. I've got my piece of charcoal and we're going to get started in earnest here. Now I've got to allow for the hat. This is what makes it tricky. I don't want the hat going too close to the top. So I'm going to make a mark here. I'm going to judge the hat band in this sweep. And so the hair mask will be here. I'm just kind of observing. Because of the hat, I haven't made the bottom mark yet because I think, it'd be up in here, so I'm probably going to wind up there, but I'm not sure yet. This hair mask comes down. Forehead. And the eyebrows are right in here. The center line of her face is right down here, and I'm just expressing it in a curved line for now. And her nose is going to be somewhere in here, and the chin is somewhere in there. So now I've just done this, then this sweeps back. This comes in. Chin comes in here. The ear is over in this area. This brim sweeps way back in here. And so I'm just roughly putting in the roadmaps of the face and the head. In generalizations, I haven't gotten specific yet, but you go from the general to the specific. So and everything that I look at, I'm looking at comparing distances from the next thing. So then generally her neck kind of sweeps down like this. And under the ear begins where her neck is. There's her hair sweeping around the back. And then coming down over her shoulder. So the hair shows over here. And it comes down like that. So now I've got a really rough generalization of where we're placed to hit what I want to show. Again, the head, if I measure with my hand, with my end of my thumb and the end of my pinky finger at an angle like this, that's right about right, I think. Her head, of course, sticks up into the hat. So now let's begin to get a little bit specific. I'm going to concentrate on her head and we'll place the hat on more specifically after that, rather than the other way around. So I'm looking at the angle of her eyes, which maybe not that much, but it angles down a little bit, and I want to make sure I keep that angle because that angle will be repeated in other places. You don't want one angle going this way and one the other this line. Well, for this piece of forehead, so her eye goes in that area. And it takes an abrupt turn here. And it comes down. There's under her eye here. Now this sweep of her nose comes down. And it comes out pretty close to, from my perspective, the chin. I mean, her cheek, sorry. And then this sweeps under. And I'm judging this wedge here, which we call the keystone plane. I'm picking up her eye over here. And this proximate location, her eyebrow comes off of that. Well, I'm probably going to have to wind up moving her head. Let me continue on with this.
This is Jim again. I should have mentioned that if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it, or you can put it in the chat.
I'm judging the space between the eye and the hair. And if the eyebrow is here and it comes across like this, then I need this space to where her hair sweeps down. And that's coming from here. So we're sweeping this here. down across to where it here is. This part in her hair. Actually, comes in that area. Now the brim of the hat. And sweep down across. The distance between her eye and her ear has to be accounted for. The ear usually fits between the tip of the nose, if you draw a line across, and the upper part of the eye or the eyebrow. So here's the tip of her nose, so her ear, so we're in this area, but it would come in here and come up into this area. I may even have to increase the distance. More like this, comparing the corner of the eye to where the ear is. So it's going to be more in this. So I'm beginning to close in on proportions of this head. I'm judging the features of the jawline. It comes up to and meets the ear.
Do you spray your drawing after it fix it?
No, I don't. Very few pastel artists do. Some do, but I've never been successful with that. It changes the color too much.
Jerry, could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, the question was, do I spray the pastel painting after I've finished it? And my answer was, no, I don't. I did that early on, and I found that the colors changed, darkened, usually lost their sparkle and so forth. So
Actually, my question was, do you spray the charcoal drawing
Oh.
to set that?
Oh, yeah, okay. No, I don't spray the charcoal drawing. What I do is I'm doing an extra dark. I was doing this at home for myself. I would have much lighter touch, but I want everybody to be able to see it. And I will just dust that off quite a bit before I begin with the color, so it doesn't influence it. It won't influence it too much anyway, but I do that. But yeah, at the end of the painting, because of the much better materials that they've developed in just the last 20, 25, maybe 30 years. As far as papers go, as far as assortment of pastels that are available, there's so many sets now. Terry, Ludwig, Rembrandt is what I started out with. It's a kind of a semi-hard and a medium hardness, but I used that for years, and then got into Sennelier, which is a French expensive, as I was afraid to use them for the first few years, but it's a very soft but very vibrant pastel. There's just all kinds of pastel sets, and my collection is, a mixture of all of those. In fact, I almost forgot. These are called Holbein, and I want you to know, well, I won this in a pastel show up in Oregon, the Oregon pastel artists. And so this is a virgin, untouched by human hands set of pastels. I have some of these already, but this is a nice portrait set. So it's got a lot of nice, useful colors, and they're kind of semi-hard, but they're very useful to get into. They're square of about a quarter of an inch or a little bit more, maybe 3/16, and 2 inches long. But you can actually sharpen these if you want to, but you can get into smaller spaces that the big clunky pastel, too soft of a pastel would do. So I haven't used these yet. I just got them a few days ago. I thought I'd bring it to you to show in a nice little box. Okay, back to, oh, I know, I was going to say that I don't spray the pastel finished painting at the end. I treat it like a newborn baby, you know. I hold it up and I whack it on the back several times, you know. I hear it crying, you know, but that loosens up and knocks off the very loose particles. Another thing that I do that I think helps, I mean, I don't know for sure, but the theory is right, is that when I do one and I want to frame it without a mat, it needs to be on a stiff surface. So I take a piece of acid-free foam core board and I put a layer of the double stick transfer glue paper that you can get, and I mount that right on there, finished. But it has to be rolled to get all the bubbles out and whatever. And I put that right down on there, put a piece of, you know, I'm putting the back of the paper on the sticky surface. I cover that with a piece of paper like this or tracing paper, and I take the roller, the brayer, you know, and I just roll right over that portrait or whatever it is. I know the first time you're grimacing over there, and that's what I did when I first did it. But you know, so, but I just roll it right over there, and I lift that up. And on the paper is like a monoprint of pastel, but it never shows in the pastel painting at all, because you don't shift it one way or the other. You just roll right over it. I think that puts the pastel into the paper better. You know, that's my theory anyway. And then I go ahead and mount it in a frame without a mat. And, you know, some of those are, most of those are done with, only one is done with the mat.
Wants to bring one.
Yeah, well, if you want to, I want to continue on here. I'm following the lines of her head. This is why I didn't put the hat in first. But we're clear up here. I have to remember on this judge. We're clear up here. So this is where hair meets the hat. And then there's the width of the brim. And you've seen artists do this in cartoons and things. So I'm just measuring how far the hat brim goes out compared to her head. So the space between her eyes and the corner of her eye over here is about the space where the brim of the hat should come. This is how you can measure things as you work. So, doing this as a transfer, I know that I've got to get that hat brim out there. If, you know, if I misjudge that. So I have to meet this, and it has to be in a nice suit. And then, as it sweeps back in, I have to see where it meets the cheek over here. And although I've not refined it, but it hits the cheek right about there. So it comes in and it sweeps around. So that's the general shape of that hat. Now this, of course, as it sweeps down, it narrows right here. And goes along there very narrowly. And it sweeps out here. And again, I've got to see what from the ear to, well, I'm going to go from the corner of her eye to the brim there. So no, that's not right. Do a longer Here to here has to be about the same. So that's about where the hat brim is going to come. Because we have hair masks. We've got the distance from our ear to the brim, which I have to account for. So this comes in here. This brim coming across is going to come right in there. And her hair sweeps out. So this shape right here is what I have to judge for that brim. Now, following the edge of her cheek, her head, I draw the top of the hat. That comes over. If it's nice earring thing. Her hair sweeps down. Across a graceful sweep there. And we've got the drawing pretty much done as far as I need to carry it. So I don't know if you want to take a break now.
Me?
Did you want to?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, I don't know how well you can see this, but this is a pastel painting I did 2017, 2016 maybe. I call it the minstrel. This is from a photo that I took in Folsom, California, I believe, with a Renaissance fair. Those fairs provide a lot of material, colorful characters. The background is totally made up. He was standing on a stage, actually, outdoor stage, but it was late afternoon, so the light was right, and so I just made up the background. This one is a young Hispanic girl, the name of Leandra, and her and her mother posed for me several times for just portraits and things. And I did a little bit looser application if you were able to look at it closely. It's done a little bit looser than what I normally work. But I like doing that style. I should do more of it. This is another example of my work that I brought along with me. This was my wife and my granddaughter. And there's a story too long to tell here, but I messed up my wife's face when I did the first attempt. I had my granddaughter pretty good likeness, but with my wife, for some reason, I got her head too narrow, and it threw everything off. I even posted it to Facebook. I got a lot of compliments because people didn't know what my wife looked like, but my daughter let me know. It wasn't right, so I said, yeah, you're right. So I went back, redid it, scrubbed off all the pastel with a stiff brush on her face, and redid it to whiten her face a little bit. She normally wears glasses, but I had to take them off because of the sun. Her glasses turned dark, so I couldn't see her eyes. But I finally arrived at a pretty good likeness and was happy with it. And but when you do that, everything else changes too. I had to change her neck. I had to change part of her shirt to the shoulder line. All those things changes when you whiten the face, you know, and it influences everything else. So this one. All of those were done from photographs, but this one I did from life, start to finish. And so I really enjoy being able to spend time and do something like this from life. This is an Indian lady by the name of Rupa, I think, and but she was posing in a workshop. Well, let's get back to the actual application of color and get on with this. You also, an easier way maybe to find my website is just geraldboyd.com. And it's my name, so GERALDBOYD.com. And it'll take you right there. Okay, now.
Tell me how the face is.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Turn slightly to your right. Right? Okay. So now I'm going to begin with some of the darkest darks. And that's your mass up here. And here. You need to know your light source, where it's coming from, because everything that's hiding from the light goes dark. To one degree or another. Let's talk over here. I'm not going to do that. Okay. Even this little area down here will help me keep the values right.
Jerry, would you always pick black for your darks?
I don't like to get into black unless it's really called for, because black influences other colors and dulls them. Dirty. But there's nothing wrong with black. I mean, you know, and I may add some to that later if I need to. That's still too light, so I'm having to go back to. No, those are too dark. I'm just kind of scribbling this on right now. Now the hair on the other side, it's pretty dramatic in the red sense. Because it's got light on it. The area here where the hair is still pretty much in shadow. And then it comes back into the light. I like to work as broadly as I can. If I can use the side of the pastel, it's better. I'm going to try to get this, this dark area of the hat green. I'm going to try to knock a little bit of the charcoal off as I got into the face. Just leave a little bit of a ghost image there so I can move from. I'm going to add a little background color, just indicate it. It's got a rather dramatic hat cover. I'm not concerned if I exaggerate a little bit because I can back it off a little bit later if I want to. Or I can leave it just for drama effect. Work this into underneath the brim is picking up a little light on that side.
How did you nail that color so perfectly? How did you nail that color so perfectly?
Oh, well, I didn't. I was guessing, hoping. So here's, let's see. Here's another one that's in the light more. Notice I haven't been blending at all, and I do as little blending as I can. Let the pastel blend. I've found that blending light into dark is better and easier than dark into light. So keep that in mind. You could make a pretty good transition. Just with the pastel itself. Okay, I want to tackle the shadow side of the face. I want to put a little highlight of it first. Right on the edge of your nose. This is not going to be exact, but it gives me something to compare values to. A little bit of engineer. On a darker paper, that would be more. There's a shadow that is quite warm. It goes under her nose. I want to put that in. That's almost repeated over here on the cheek. Right here. This color kind of wraps around the wing of her nose. You see it under her chin. Use pastel pencils too.
What brand of pastel pencils do you like?
I like Carbothello pretty well. There's a Conte, but it's fatter than the others and doesn't fit into the sharpener very well. This is a harder pastel. I don't even know if I've got the correct for this one. That should work.
Jerry, we have a question in the chat. Can you give us a list of the brand names of supplies he is using? It's hard to hear what the names are.
Yeah, I use a variety of pastels brands that I've collected over the years. And some of the names are Rembrandt, which is kind of not too soft, not too hard, kind of a medium hardness. I've kind of graduated off that though. I used, pastel sets from Terry Ludwig. They're square like. There's the Holbein that I was showing earlier. There is Great American brand. There's I can't even, there's Seigneur,
Unison,
Unison, yeah, there's all kinds of
Schminke.
brands. These are Unison, I believe. So Yeah, and then I work on the pastel paper, that's sort of a sand, we call it sanded paper, which sounds funny, it should be sandpaper, but anyway. Pastel Premier is what I use, but there's UArt and there's Color Fix and by Kenny's Touch and just a variety of pastel papers. If you're just getting into it, I suggest that you get some samples of each and try them out, and whatever works best for you is what you should use.
Thank you.
Much of her face is a shadow in this. That gets into some deep colors in here.
When you put down that shadow to get ready to put in the rest highlights, do you grab a particular color or does it depend on the situation?
Now, just judging by value and warm and cool.
You've worked in many mediums in your life, right?
soften this a little bit right here.
Would you call this layering that you're doing right now, Jerry?
Yeah.
So you started with the dark and then you start putting the lighter ones on top of that. Is it coming out the way you want?
Sorry.
Is it coming out the way you want?
Well, I'm struggling a little bit, to tell you the truth.
Sometimes one of the pictures that turn out the best.
Struggle time?
Right. Takes a new level of involvement.
Doesn't it? Jerry, I know you use all kinds of mediums. Which one is your favorite?
I mean,
Like you do oil, you do
yeah, I do. I think pastel.
pastel.
um,
Why do you think so?
Maybe because it's usually the most forgiving.
Ah,
You can change it easily. As far as the application goes, you're able to lay down your pastels and walk away. You don't have brushes to wash.
good
It's
point.
never going to dry out. So,
You come back after dinner,
yeah.
huh? No, that's an appealing thing. That may make me change just for that.
Mhm.
And you said we don't have to worry about all that matting and framing special treatment stuff anymore.
Mhm.
That's appealing too. What's the largest pastel you've ever done?
I haven't really done any really large ones. Probably something like 36 by 40 or something.
That's larger in my mind. 36 by 40.
Well, this comes from the lips of a billboard painter.
But I guess once you've been on those billboards, that seems small, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Did you paint the billboards with acrylic?
Oil paint.
Oil. Wow.
You get quality oil paint too.
When you did those billboards, about how long did it take for you to finish one?
Depends on what it was, but it would often take a week, but sometimes only 3 days.
Skill.
Yeah.
Largest billboard I ever had was portrait head, I mean.
Say it again?
Largest portrait head I ever painted was one of Tony Danza, the actor,
Yeah.
was advertising Who's the Boss?
Mhm.
And that thing was massive. It was 32 feet high from his chin to his, and they cut off his head up here.
Yeah.
So,
That must have been a real challenge.
yeah.
How'd you keep your proportions? You can't even step back far enough to see that.
Yeah, you kind of get a feel for it.
Feel for it. I follow you around and get some experience, huh? Can you imagine? Tony Danza.
Did you use a grid?
Yeah, the we made a pattern for all the billboards projected on a screen on paper. And, you know, so
And they left the projector on, and you just kind of traced around the grid or something?
we actually used the same method, believe it or not, as Michelangelo did in the Sistine Chapel.
Like project?
He made his drawings on big sheets of paper. He had assistants prick little holes along the lines. And then they put up there and hit it with a bag of powdered charcoal.
Mhm.
Charcoal goes through the little holes, transfers onto the surface, and you redraw it. That's how we did it. We had an electric needle though. You know, electricity going through it onto a metal wall. But that's how we,
Very cool. That sounds really fascinating, actually. Did you ever have to do some of those billboards in bad weather?
yeah, you couldn't do it in the rain, but had to deal with wind and this is beginning, I'm feeling to round into a better presentation. But I probably won't have time
But you've captured
to
her.
complete it as faithfully as I hope. Some of these go very nicely, quickly, accurately, and others, for some reason, we've been struggling.
You captured it.
And the details there. Your name? Now I'm using black to get darker. And I need white. Do it. As you're working on something, um, the tooth of the paper starts to fill up, and maybe you can't get it to apply right. If you just take a stiff oil painting brush, and you can just brush off the pastel down to back down to the grit and start over. On my wife's portrait, when I decided I needed to change it, I just took a stiff oil painting brush and just scrubbed off her entire face. And
Those
started
dusters
again.
work too. The little dusters that you use to clean computer keyboards.
Yeah,
If you put a little attachment, you can.
maybe that would work too. But you really have
Gotta
to
take it out,
scrub pretty
right?
hard. Have to scrub pretty hard, but you can get it back down.
Can't do it.
Wow.
So we're about ready to wind it up here.
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes, I'd say.
Okay. Now, depending on the other kind of. Maybe the time signal, but. As I work on this, I'm starting to see some. Things. That are working. But this is not been one of my.
We have a question. What if you mess up the tooth?
Of the
That's
paper.
exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
They may not.
The brush will knock that extra pastel off and you get back down into. And
A good stiff brush and knock it off.
yeah,
So you pretty much were telling us that when you get finished, you just frame it, right? Well, no, you said tap it backwards,
yeah.
like a baby. Then frame it. No mat with glass recommended.
So you're doing blending with your finger. Do you ever use any other tools to blend with?
Hardly ever. But you can use such things as a styrofoam peanut, works pretty good. They have these blending stops and things, but I've never liked them very well.
I heard of a product called oil pastels. How are they different?
Yeah, well, they have oil mixed into them, obviously, and they're not considered in the same. They're considered a completely different medium
Oh.
than pastel.
Mhm.
Even though they have pastel as a title, you're not allowed to enter those into pastel competitions.
Oh, my.
Yeah, they always say no oil pastels. Because it's just a different. I've used them a little bit, but I don't like them. So I don't.
I guess that means you're finished.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I struggled a little bit with this one, to be frank, and but I'm starting to get the feel of it. If I had more time, I would. But it should have gone better at the beginning. I had a pretty good drawing.
What was it you were struggling with?
Yes, we couldn't tell.
Well, yeah, I brought all these pastels with me, but I didn't have as many darks as I should have had. And I have those at home and I didn't bring. And I wasn't anticipating that, but anyway, that gives you the process.
Yes.
That's
What you've captured her.
the idea of it. I gotta have general fair likeness.
Yes.
And
I hope it wasn't me.
but every little shape, has to be the right value, the right color. And so sometimes I hit it right off.
Good job. Yeah.
Others.
I think you're
I'm
being
gonna
humble.
give that to you if you'd like.
Oh, I would love it.